The human brain always absorbs things best in threes, and communicators know this.
Yep.
So if you've got 15 priorities, you have no priorities. And so it's really important, and I really find that in nonprofit, every program helps someone. So it's really hard to say no. So when setting priorities, it has to be a clear way to say yes and to say no, because if it doesn't give you the ability to say no, then it's not really helping you set a strategy.
Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd.
Hello and welcome to On Top of PR. I'm your host, Jason Mudd. I'm with Axia Public Relations, and today we're joined by Amy Dunham, who is Chief Communications Officer for Habitat for Humanity International. Amy leads Habitat for Humanity's brand, marketing campaigns, and communication efforts across its global footprint in all 50 U.S. states and in more than 70 countries. Before joining Habitat in 2022, she held brand and communication roles at the NCAA, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and U.S. Airways. Amy, welcome to On Top of PR.
Hi, Jason. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. I'm glad to be here. Excited to talk to you. And goodness, all 50 states and more than 70 countries. I'm sure you've got a team of hundreds that work with you, right?
Oh, wouldn't that be amazing? No, we've got a team of about 75 stationed all over the world, and we keep pretty busy.
Yeah, I would imagine it sounds like that. So tell me, your team of how many you said?
About 75.
75. Okay. So that's like one per country almost.
Thankfully, we do have national organizations in the countries, but a lot of them need a lot of support on program measurement and descriptions and stuff. So yeah, it keeps us pretty busy.
Yeah, I would imagine. So walk our audience through briefly kind of how your team is organized.
Sure. So we're broken down into two key parts aligned with what our mission is as a division, which is to bring new hearts and minds to the mission and also to engage and inform the audiences that are already engaged with Habitat for Humanity. So on the global network communication side of things, that's where we really talk to our family. So that's our employee communications as well as our network. And so across the 50 states, we have nearly 1,000 affiliates. So communicating with that group, plus our 45 affiliates in Canada, and then also the global network around the world. So also in there, we've got our social media team, our PR team, and our team that supports the Habitat Restore, which is our charity shops, where you can get home design and home building materials at a deep discount. And then over on the other side, on the strategic communications and marketing side, we've got photo, video, brand, content, our magazine, digital media, as well as kind of partner activation. And our big project that we manage out of Global Communications is the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Work Project, which is our big build that we've been doing for over 40 years around the world.
Wow. Awesome. So you're really overseeing quite a bit of what some people might consider to be traditional marketing as well.
Yeah, it's a fun remit because the brand is a big part of Habitat. Here in the US, we're really well known, not necessarily well understood, but I find anytime I'm out in the wild wearing a Habitat logo, people have a tendency to make a noise like I just showed them a puppy. So it's really wonderful, but people don't know a lot about the organization and the breadth of the work that we do. So a lot of it is about how do we actually get people to understand the breadth of the work that we're doing, whether it's, microfinance in sub-Saharan Africa or land ownership rights for women in Myanmar. There's a lot that we do that people don't know about. So some of that you have to kind of jump in front of people to make sure they know about it.
Well, you're reminding me, one of my first projects as an intern was to basically promote the involvement of NFL athletes in a home building project on a Saturday during the off season. And obviously that was a lot of fun and very memorable for me, and lining up the interviews and lining up the photography and that kind of thing for it. So I'm sure not all of your events have NFL players involved, but it'd be
a lot cooler if they did, but unfortunately not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, good. Our topic today is leveraging market insights to shape strategy. And I know we've got like 3 points we want to talk through. And as we're talking throughout this conversation, I'm sure other things will come up. Quick shout out to our mutual acquaintance, Chris Chimes, for the referral for you as a guest. Really appreciate it when good guests refer us to other good guests. And of course, we expect that our best guests are going to know other guests to bring on the show as well. And we'll be sure to put a link to the episode notes of the episode we did with Chris Chimes from Carnival Cruise Lines. So, and you and Chris used to work together, right?
We did at U.S. Airways and at Burson Marsteller Public Relations. And I was actually an intern in his office at American Airlines when I was in college as well.
Okay, nice.
We go way back.
Nice. And so obviously you kept working together. So that must have been okay.
He's incredible. I learned so much from him. And he's one of those people that he can do more with 5 words than most people can do with 100. So he's my forever inspiration on using words well and being clear and concise.
Nice. Excellent. Yes, he speaks very highly of you as well. So the first thing we wanted to talk about was internal stakeholders' views and aspirations and how it often discounts the current state. Why don't we talk through that a little bit more, and I'll ask you some follow-up questions.
So we were doing a brand refresh over the last 18 months or so at Habitat, and we were also updating our overarching strategy, the organizational strategy for the next 3 years. And it was really interesting to be doing those 2 things at the same time. And so as we were doing the first phase of the brand refresh, there's a lot of discovery in that, of course, and doing a lot of interviews with key stakeholders internally and getting a sense of where they want to go. Because of course, you want your brand and your communication strategy to really align with the direction that the organization was going. And it became clear pretty quickly that some of the folks that had come in from the more INGO, the international non-government organization space, had aspirations for Habitat to feel very different in the market than we currently did. And so it was really important to calibrate early on that we're not 18 years old and going off to college across country. So deciding to go by our middle name is not a great call for a very strong brand. So we need to be much more reflective of where we are in the market and taking audiences on a journey rather than trying to show up materially differently and suddenly be like, we're a research entity rather than the home builder you've known us to be. So It was really helpful to be having those conversations about the brand at the same time we were talking about the strategy.
And so again, our topic today is leveraging market insights to shape strategy. And really, ultimately, I mean, you can't have good communication or public relations strategy without messaging. And so, sometimes I merge the two together when I'm talking and advising clients. Well, let's focus on our strategy and our messaging. And I feel like they can't go, they're in lockstep together. You can't have a strategy of this, but your messaging is that. And it's very similar when we're advising publicly traded companies. It's like, well, let's get the investor relations team involved, because what we're saying to Main Street needs to be consistent with what we're saying to Wall Street. And, and you can't be fragmented like that. It's somewhat what I think you're kind of describing as well, is you obviously have to make sure your internal stakeholders are on the same page of ultimately what your audience wants.
Yeah, very much so. And what it really boiled down to is that they were really focused on the space that we needed to occupy that we didn't yet, and unintentionally not speaking about the space that we were already occupying well. So it ended up being, they didn't intend to discount the work that we're doing to build around the world and finance homes and repair homes. They were thinking about the knowledge gaps out in the world. So as they talked about their aspirations, they were taking as a given that we would continue to do the things that we've long been doing, but not acknowledging that the audience doesn't even know that we do those things now. A lot of people think that Habitat gives away homes. So in our research, we were able to show data that showed they don't even know that we give mortgages, that we are a mortgage lender as well. So let's not take that as a given. We need to bring people on that journey before we can then take them on the next step. So it was really about they had things they take as givens that we were able to demonstrate through the market data that they were actually not givens yet.
That would be interesting because, as I said earlier, I have some familiarity with your organizations and very familiar with the mortgage concept, but maybe others aren't.
Yeah, we really find that people, they make a sound like you showed them a puppy when you say Habitat, but then beyond that, they're like, Jimmy Carter, and you give away houses, right? Yeah. So then it's like, actually, no. And we actually operate internationally. When I tell people that I'm with Habitat International, they're like, oh, is that a new thing? It's like, no, actually, since 1976, when we were founded,
Wow.
we have been international from the outset. But people's experience is really with their local affiliate where they go out and build. And that opportunity to participate is really our special sauce. So it's not to discount that at all. Just what people participate in is part of our work, but not the whole breadth of our work. And so really that's where the messaging and the branding needs to come in, where we need to invite people on that broader journey to participate.
Well, 1976 was a great year because that's the year I was born. So
hey, all right.
Now I'll always remember.
Yeah, we've got a big birthday coming up in next year.
No,
in 2026.
no.
Well, we
You
do,
have a
you
big
don't. Forever 29.
That's right. I would hope so. Right. Well, good. So, we mentioned strategy and messaging going hand in hand together. We also want to talk about how strategy is an art, science, and a passion, and bringing data to debates. So tell me more kind of about your theory or philosophy around that.
So when strategy is something that people get really excited about, and rightly so, it's the direction of the organization. And particularly for my experience working for mission-driven organizations, people are really invested in that mission. I mean, I make the comment that when we're wearing Habitat shirts, it goes right through the fabric, right onto people's hearts. And so it's wonderful that people are invested. And in nonprofits that have grassroots starts, big personalities have a tendency to drive things. And
right.
So we've had 2 CEOs in the entire time of our organization, the founder, and then Jonathan Reckford, who's celebrating 20 years in just 2 months. In August of 2025, he'll be here. He'll have been here for 20 years. And so a lot of perspectives on where we've been and where we should be, but also some new leaders who don't have the perspective on where we have been already and what we've tried and what works and what doesn't in the housing and nonprofit sectors. So when we can bring the data on, well, actually, Harvard does a lot of great research in the United States through their Joint Housing Center. We don't need to compete with Harvard on research in the United States. That is not a place for us to play and win. So really trying to focus on where is the white space and really bring that kind of market analysis. But then also, what is the kind of language that resonates? There's a lot of jargon within any industry, and the nonprofit industry is not immune to that. And so one of the things that we found in our benchmarking was that a lot of the words, as nonprofits try to describe their broader impact, the words have gotten very repetitive and they feel vague and jargony to the public. And so sounding like everyone else is actually not a good thing to do. And certainly anybody who's a communications professional knows that to be true, but bringing data to back that up was something that was really helpful to inform those early conversations around strategy and the direction we needed to go. And the stories we told ourselves internally, not just externally.
100%. Before we pressed record, you and I were chatting, and I mentioned that I did a keynote presentation today. And one of the things I told the audience is, to really stand out in PR, whatever you're doing, is to make sure you're saying things that are provocative, contrarian, and have a unique point of view from what everybody else is saying, because otherwise you're just going to blend in and not stand out. And in this particular context, you're not going to be quoted. You're not going to be remembered. And so, you really have to say something that's going to help you stand out. Going back to your comment about data, a quote or a saying I use all the time is, if we have data on this, let's follow the data. If we don't have data, let's follow your recommendations, right? So it's just kind of a way of specifying that, look, data is where it's going to lead us and direct us, but the backup is going to be our gut instincts, right? And so I love that, when we have data to work with, when we pursue data, whether it's third party or other type of research, if you've got it, just use it, and you don't have to wing it. So I like that a lot.
Well, and the dynamic we face in a federation, because Habitat in communities all across the United States are individual 501c3s with their own individual boards. So when I roll out an updated messaging platform or brand platform, I can't be directive and say this is what to use. I have to demonstrate the value and back it up with data, because they have their own experiences in their own community as to what works best to get people to engage with Habitat. And so I think data is important to those conversations about what tests well, but then give them the ability to look at the data themselves and then evaluate it. So it's not a conversation about I know better versus you know better. It's much more about here's what the data indicates, and now here's the flexibility to be able to use it in the way that works best in your market.
Oh, I love that. That's good. And so real quick, just for our audience, let's define what federation is, what federation means.
Yes. So a federation, there's federations and confederations and associations. And for whatever reason, I have found myself working in the federation and association space for the last 15 years, perhaps because I'm sick in the head. But a federation, it's independent organizations that try to work interdependently with a shared brand but separate finances through an affiliation agreement. So we have affiliation agreements with all of our affiliates in the United States, and then at the country level in summer branches, I won't get too in the weeds, but so Habitat for Humanity International is a 501c3. We're headquartered in Atlanta. And then the Federation is the 70 countries and the nearly 1,000 affiliates across the United States.
So collaboration is obviously very important. And also, as you described earlier, to bring data and collaboration and consensus and rationale for some of the decisions you're making to help make sure that everybody's not only feeling heard and feeling included, to be able to sing well from the same song sheet and all kind of just get along and understand what's in everybody's best interest. Is that kind of a balance that you have to manage on a daily basis?
For sure. I'm always thinking about what's the value proposition that I bring? What am I doing to help our network work smarter rather than harder? I could never do the job of an executive director or national director for Habitat for Humanity. They are running 5 businesses before lunch every day.
Right.
Mortgage lenders and volunteer management and navigating zoning and government relations. It is so unbelievably complex. Construction management, all of that. It's deceptively complex, and they're doing amazing work. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I've been doing federated communications for 15 years. So how can I add value in a way that I don't need to ask them to be able to do? So how can I deliver a brand platform and a messaging framework that makes their job easier by giving them flexibility? And so it's really through the lens of how can I add value in a way to enable their work rather than to direct how things should get done.
This episode is brought to you by Audible. Enjoy 30 days free of Audible Premium Plus by going to ontopofpr.com/audible.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
Let's pivot to talk about setting organizational priorities. We're kind of leaning into that or leading towards that right now, naturally and organically with our conversation. But, when you set organizational priorities, what are some of your recommendations?
The human brain always absorbs things best in 3s, and communicators know this.
Yep.
So if you've got 15 priorities, you have no priorities. And so it's really important, and I really find that in nonprofit, every program helps someone. So it's really hard to say no. So when setting priorities, it has to be a clear way to say yes and to say no, because if it doesn't give you the ability to say no, then it's not really helping you set a strategy. So really being disciplined, and everybody wants prioritization until their thing isn't prioritized. So just being willing to have some of those tough conversations is really the most important thing. Have those at the leadership level to make sure that you're really distilling it down in a way that people can absorb internally and not have to code switch between the story they're telling internally and externally.
Yeah. You're hitting all my love languages here with the, talking in 3s and staying audience focused and all of that, because that's really what, I think good communications based on research and science tells you, how to move forward. So I just want to make sure we spend enough time on this particular element of, setting organizational priorities that advocate for clear, consistent, audience-focused language from the onset, and then internal rallying cries become taglines quickly. What do you mean by that?
So what happened at Habitat, and I'll be vulnerable here with a mostly communicator audience, there started to be an internal rallying cry, because everybody knows that Habitat builds, people don't know much about the other work that we do. We do a lot of work around helping change outdated laws and policy advocacy and, advocating with the G7 and with US Congress and stuff like that. And so this internal rallying cry about we build and we influence started developing, and people got really excited about it because it helped them think in new ways about this is what we do. In parallel, I'm doing this research that's indicating that actually broadening the definition of build and inviting people to participate, because that's our special sauce, that we should define everything we do as participating in a build. And frankly, there are some countries in the world where you cannot go in and say that we want to influence because it's an authoritarian government and that'll get you kicked out of the country.
Right.
But it became this rallying cry. And I remember I went to an event in a country that shall not be named, and I stepped out of an elevator to walk into their anniversary gala. And on a big step and repeat, it said, we build and we influence. And I was like, oh dear. And it had crossed the Rubicon into being language that they were using with donors and stuff at a public event. So that was the point at which I was like, I let this get away from me. And so I had to sit down with the rest of the executive team and say, we have to actively nip this in the bud and say, this is not going to be the name of the strategy. This is not going to be our new brand platform. And it's because we shouldn't be code switching between what we say internally and what we say externally. So that was one that it was a learning that as soon as I saw it become a thing, I should have named it and nipped it sooner, because I'm sitting here at my desk with you writing in my notebook that I'm using still has that embossed on the front from a couple of years ago.
Okay. Well, that's what I love about this profession is we can get better every day. And, I'm reminding myself every day this year that perfectionism slows you down. But at the same time, in hindsight, you see things with fresh eyes or different perspective. And so, I think my team probably hates it when they show me something, because then I see it again and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I had another idea, or I slept on this and I thought about this perspective or whatever. And so, I think there is something to be said about constant improvement, but at the end of the day, what is it? What's the saying? Perfect is the enemy of done. And so sometimes we just have to move forward and, write down notes of what we want to do different next time or next year, and just continue to get 1% better every day.
And just being willing to share. Not everybody has to learn everything the hard way. Yeah. So I tell my daughters all the time that asking for help is the strongest thing you can do. And people won't know. You got to model that by saying here's a place where I messed up, demonstrating that I need help as well. And hopefully that'll signal to folks on the team that asking for help and acknowledging failure means that if you fail, the world won't end. And so let's try some stuff. Let's be innovative.
Well, going back to perfectionism, right? The idea that, if you're vulnerable with people and you tell them that you messed up, they actually trust you more than if you act like, or you really have your act together, which is kind of interesting to think about, right?
It really is. And Simon Sinek has a great line to that effect that I won't butcher here, but effectively, if you try to seem perfect, people will look for your flaws.
Right.
But if you ask for help, and guess what? Generally speaking, if you go to another human and say, I admire what you do and I think you're good at it, will you help me? Most of the time, people will say yes. So why don't just lean into that?
Yeah, 100%. Well, Amy, as we're wrapping up, do you what are you working on right now that's got you excited or feeling challenged by or looking forward to?
So with 2026 being Habitat's 50th anniversary, I'm really excited about the plans that we're putting together to celebrate our anniversary. Really don't want it to be a timeline celebration. So we really want to focus on all that we've been able to accomplish in our first 50 years, but then to focus on what we can get done in the future. So for much of our history, Habitat, if you were to try to distill Habitat down to an item, I think it would be a hammer. And so what we're going to try to do with this new campaign is to really have the item be more of a door, and all of the imagery of what an open door can lead to, that a good home leads to stability and joy and dignity and building a life on your own terms. So really excited to work on that new messaging framework for Habitat going into our 50th anniversary year.
Well, on the surface, I like that a lot. Obviously, I don't know all the nuances and rationale for it, but it sounds really good. So what do the next 50 years look like for your organization?
Well, housing is changing really fast. Here in the United States, the whole sector has been underbuilding since 2008 when the housing market crashed. Right. So we've now got a huge gap here in the United States. And it's one of the housing markets, much of the Western world, the housing markets were largely functioning up until about 5 years ago. But now supply and demand just do not meet at all, particularly on the more affordable side. 60% of Americans can't afford a $300,000 home if you can even find one. Mm-hmm. And then more globally, 1 in 3 people on earth don't have access to a safe, decent home to wake up in every day. Wow. So it's a massive problem. So scaling is going to be we cannot build our way out of this one house at a time. Mm-hmm. So we're really focused on the things that how can Habitat build more? How can we increase our production? We're one of the top 10 private builders in the United States already, but we want to scale bigger and faster. And so that means some laws we're got to work on zoning laws so that we can build more densely. So working on those sort of things in the US, microfinance, getting people access to funding to build more around the world. So we're just really focused on scaling through innovative financing and innovative building strategies and just trying to get more people out to volunteer and get involved in the cause.
100% a material and important challenge for our nation and beyond, obviously in the globe. And it sounds like you guys not only have the insight and expertise, but the appetite and passion for the cause, which is obviously very important. So thank you and your colleagues for all your hard work in that space. Thanks
so much. It's a great job. And I can't believe I get to wake up and do it every day.
Yeah, for sure. So as you were talking and you mentioned, more density and things like that, does your organization do any, for lack of a better word, condos or townhomes where it's multifamily, but it's still home ownership?
Absolutely. So in the United States, we really focus on home ownership. It's a core of the American dream, building intergenerational wealth. Absolutely. We do still build single family homes. Generally speaking, we try not to have those be much bigger than 1,200 or 1,500 square feet. Okay. But in a lot of places where we operate, even a single family home is just, so we are building condos and townhomes, multifamily units. At the Carter Work Project in Twin Cities last year, we were building 4-story homes as well as duplexes and single family homes, with solar tiles. In Austin, Texas, for the Carter Work Project this year, we're going to be building houses that are heated by geothermal. There's some really cool stuff going on across the Habitat network.
Nice. Well, Amy, as we're wrapping up, any kind of morning routines or books that you recommend or anything like that, just kind of let a little more insight into you and what you are passionate about?
Well, I have 2 kids and 2 dogs, so my morning routine is chaos, and that's not going to be helpful to share with anybody. But a book that I recommend, 2 books that I recommend to everyone. One is Factfulness by Hans Rosling, which is really the notion about checking back in on the things that we take for granted to be true, and gives a mental model to see the world through a more positive lens. Okay. So I love that as a communications and brand professional, but also just as a human being. Yeah. And I'm also a big advocate for the book, Crucial Conversations. That training was life-changing for me, not just professionally, but personally. And I recommend it to anybody who is listening.
Okay, awesome. Speaking of people who are listening, if one of our audience members wants to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best way to reach you?
It is. I am a regular on LinkedIn. I have a tendency to creep more than I post. I know I need to get better at that. But yes, I check LinkedIn every day. So that's the best way to find me.
Okay, awesome. Well, Amy, this has been a great episode. Thank you so much for being a great guest and sharing your smarts with our audience. And speaking of audience, we want to thank you for tuning in to On Top of PR today and allowing us the opportunity to help you stay on top of PR. And in the event that you found this episode helpful, which I'm sure you did, please take a moment to share it with any friends or colleagues you think would benefit from it. We really appreciate that, and I think they will too. So with that, this is Jason Mudd from Axia Public Relations signing off. I hope something great happens to you today.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by ReviewMaxer. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check out past shows at ontopofpr.com.